Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're trying to piece together a bit of a puzzle. We're looking at whispers about Samsung's next big thing, the Galaxy S27 Ultra, way before it's officially even a thing. Yeah, so our mission here is basically to unpack all the early details, the rumors, the specs people are guessing at, all based on what our source, My Fusion Mobile, has put out there. We're going to try and sift through what seems likely, what's just expected, and frankly, what's still totally up in the air for this potential beast of a phone.
And it's really, really crucial to remember right off the bat that this stuff comes from a source saying clearly not announced yet and coming soon.
Oh, Natha.
So, it's labeled as being for general info only, definitely not official. Keep that in mind as we dive in. We're basically exploring informed guesses here.
Exactly, informed guesses. So let's jump in with maybe the biggest question mark for any Ultra phone. The price. What are we looking at? According to My Fusion Mobile, the U.S. estimate is hovering around $1,500. But they do add that caveat, right? Not official, and previous models varied quite a bit depending on the specific version.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it, that an unannounced phone already has a price estimate floating around. It sort of sets expectations immediately, even if it's just a guess. The $1,500 figure signals where Samsung might be aiming right at the very top end. It implies, a certain level of premium features people would expect for that kind of money.
Okay, so with that hefty price tag kind of setting the scene, let's look under the hood. What do the headline specs tell us? We've got Android 14, a 6.6-inch 1080 by 2400 display, a 50MP main camera doing 4320p video that's 8K, right?
Yeah.
Then 12 gigs of RAM and a huge-sounding 5800 mAh battery. What's the initial picture these specs paint?
Well, those definitely shout flagship, yeah. Android 14, that's expected. The 50MP camera with 8K video, that's high-end stuff. And 12GB RAM is certainly premium, suggesting it'll handle multitasking well, although maybe not quite bleeding edge if some competitors push higher, but still very solid. Yeah. But that battery, 5800 mAh, if that's accurate, wow, that points towards potentially amazing battery life, which is always a huge deal.
Yeah, that battery size jumps out. Okay, let's talk build. Dimensions are 163.6 by 75.5 by 8 millimeter, 192 grams. But the materials are interesting. It says glass front, plastic frame, plastic back. But then it lists IPX8 water resistance good, and this armor aluminum frame with tougher drop and scratch resistance advertised. Plus stylus support. So what's the thinking here? Plastic frame and back, but then IPX8 and this tougher aluminum. And the stylus.
It's definitely an interesting mix. Look, the plastic frame and back might make some people pause, thinking it's less premium than, say, all glass or metal. But you counter that with proper IPX8 water resistance, which is a key flagship feature. And that armor aluminum frame, that's not just fluff. It suggests they're using a hardened alloy specifically for better durability, which, directly tackles that fear of dropping an expensive phone. And yeah, the style support clearly marks it as a productivity-focused device carrying on that Ultra legacy.
Right, the S Pen heritage. Okay, performance time. What's driving this thing? It lists the Qualcomm SM8475 Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, that's a 4-nanometer chip, paired with an octa-core CPU, Adreno 730 GPU, and network-wise looks like full 5G support, including the important mmWave for the US Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 5.1, GPS NFC, but no FM radio or IR blaster.
Okay, that Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, that's a really significant detail. It's not the absolute newest chip now, but it was the top dog powering most high-end Androids just last year. It's very powerful and efficient, especially being 4-nanometer. That 4mm process means tiny transistors, so more power, less battery drain, which ties back nicely to that potentially huge battery we talked about.
Yeah.
And yeah, the full 5G support, especially mmWave in the US, is crucial. It means you can tap into the absolute fastest 5G speeds that are available. This thing's built for speed.
Makes sense. Okay, cameras. The main setup is listed as 5050 MP2 MP, okay, with LED flash, 8K at 24 FPS, 4K video, and the selfie cam is an 8MP single lens, dual LED flash, does 4K video too, with stabilization. So back to that main camera, 5050 MP2 MP. What's going on there?
Yeah, that definitely raises an eyebrow for an Ultra phone. A 50MP main sensor is strong, no doubt, but a 2MP lens, I mean, honestly, those are usually just filler on budget phones, right? For basic macro shots or depth sensing, that doesn't add much value. On a flagship Ultra, you'd expect, I don't know, a high-res ultra-wide, a proper telephoto, maybe even a periscope zoom lens. So seeing a 2N key sensor there, it feels really out of place. It could just be an error in the league, a placeholder maybe, or if it's real, that's a surprisingly weak spot for a top-tier phone. It kind of undermines the Ultra name camera-wise.
That's a really good point. A 2MP lens feels underwhelming for something called Ultra.
though the 8K video capability is definitely a premium feature. Have to give it that.
True. And this actually leads us perfectly into the next bit, the contradictions within the source material itself. This is where it gets really murky. Okay, so memory. The summary says 12 GB RAM, but scroll down to the detailed specs and it says 8 GB RAM, storage is 128 or 256 GB. Then there's a Q&A section that mentions both 8 GB and 12 GB RAM are expected, along with storage options from older models. So, which is it?
Yeah. Pick a number, any number.
Exactly. And it's the same with the battery. Summary, hefty 800 mAh LiPo. Detailed specs. 5,000 mAh Li-ion. Both mention fast charging, but those capacities are quite different.
That's an 800 millihour difference. That's not insignificant.
Right. And one more, the display. Under general specs, device type is a mold, but then under display specs, it says IPS LCD capacitive touchscreen. I mean, those are fundamentally different technologies. So what are we supposed to make of all this? How do you even interpret specs when the source can't agree with itself?
Look, this kind of thing is super common with pre-release info and leaks. It happens all the time. But it really underscores why you have to read these things so carefully. The difference between 8 and 12 gigs of RAM, that affects multitasking, heavy gaming. The difference between 5,000 and 500 mAh battery, that's potentially hours of extra use. And AMOLED versus IPS LCD, that's huge for how the screen actually looks. AMOLED gives you those perfect blacks, amazing contrast, punchy colors, proper premium stuff. IPS LCD is fine, but it's a definite step down, especially for an ultraphone, which should have the best display tech. Any one of these differences could totally change the user experience and probably the final price too. So yeah, these contradictions are a big deal.
It really highlights the uncertainty, doesn't it? Okay, so acknowledging all that confusion, let's quickly cover the other bits listed. Sensors look standard high-end. Under display, fingerprint, accelerometer, gyro, proximity compass barometer, made in South Korea, naturally for Samsung. And colors. Wow, quite the list. Phantom black, green, cream, lavender graphite, sky blue, lime red, and a BMW M edition. Okay then.
Huh. A BMW edition? Yeah, that definitely screams performance or at least premium lifestyle.
Yeah.
Trying to capture that high-end market vibe.
For sure. And finally, my Fusion Mobile gives it an R rating overall, 9 out of 10. And interestingly, it's 9/10 across the board. Design, display, camera, features, connectivity, usability, performance, battery, everything's a 9.
Right, and that uniform 9/10 rating, you have to take that with a massive grain of salt, considering everything we just discussed. With an unreleased device, and especially one where the source itself lists contradictory key specs like RAM, battery, and display tech, a flat 9/10 everywhere seems overly optimistic, or maybe just a placeholder based on general expectations for a flagship. It just reinforces that disclaimer, general purposes only. It's likely based on projection, not actual testing.
Good point. So wrapping up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways for you, the listener?
Well, the S27 Ultra, based on these early whispers, looks set to be a high-end contender. We're seeing signs of strong features, IPX8, that armor frame, stylus, potentially great performance, and 8K video. But, and it's a big but, the details are fuzzy. We've got major contradictions in core areas like RAM, battery size, and even the screen type.
And that's exactly why looking closely at this early info is so valuable. It shows you the potential direction, but it also trains you to be critical, figuring out what might be real versus what's just noise or speculation. That's a key skill in following tech news today, especially when an Ultra badge implies the absolute best.
Couldn't agree more. So that leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on. When you see these kinds of leaks, with all their uncertainties and contradictions, what's the one piece of information you'd most want confirmed first? And how does all this guesswork actually affect how excited you get about new tech releases?